Death. The moments when a character takes their last breath is so often implanted into your memories. Quite often are shows defined by their characters, and by extension, their demise. Death is something handled very differently cross-culturally, yet its impact and emotion stays as poignant in media as it does in real life. When done correctly, a character's death can be a pivotal moment for any show, and alternatively, a badly done death can cause outrage and lead ironically also to the death of a show. So how should a character death be handled in anime? How should a character not be killed off? Most importantly, can death be a good thing? Let's find out. Before I begin, I would just like to ask for your help. These videos take lots of work and time, so I would greatly appreciate any support. Subs and likes go a long way in helping smaller creators like myself grow. Thanks. There are many different ways that a character should and can be killed off. One way it can be done is through surprise. When the audience is least expecting it, a character's death can be all the more impactful. A great example of this is Rengoku's death in Demon Slayer. As a result of the genre of the show being a shonen, we as an audience expect the good guys to always win. We expect that Rengoku will perform the typical last second power up, which Tanjiro is always able to do. We expect that someone, anyone, will come to save the day. We don't expect this. In its surprise, we don't get any time to prepare for it. We have to come to terms with his death alongside Tanjiro and the others. Unlike many other shows, their deaths aren't signposted episodes in advance. We get angry like Tanjiro, cry like Inosuke. We experience these emotions with these characters because we witness his death alongside them, not premeditated years in advance. Speaking of premeditated deaths, Juni Taisen. This show is just awful. The characters are one-dimensional, the world doesn't make any sense, and the CG is abysmal. But its worst aspect by far is how it handles character deaths. The show actually starts out strong. We follow a woman named the Boar as she enters a battle royale tournament called the Juni Taisen. She tells us her backstory, her killing style, her motivations. In many ways, she is built up to be the protagonist of the show. That is, until she is killed off at the end of the first episode. This initial shock is powerful, yes, but where it falters is in its repetition. Each following episode follows a similar structure. Focus on one of the 12 fighters, learn their backstory, start to like them, and then boom. Death. What was once the unexpected has now become the expected. It's not long before the audience can gather this pattern, and how each episode begins results in their death being expected. This prevents the audience from connecting with them, making their heartfelt backstory pointless. We don't connect with them because we know they will die soon. This is the worst way death can be used. But what about when death isn't surprising, yet still holds all the emotional impact regardless? What about an anime where a character's death is foreshadowed episodes in advance, yet it only adds to its impact? What about a show which I still cry at even on my 10th viewing? That show is Your Lie in April. Kaori is a character which is impossible to not love. She is charismatic, funny, caring, and sadly, most of all, dying. From as early as the midway point of the show, we as an audience know she is sick. Very sick. It isn't until later on we realize how very sick she is, and the effect this has on the protagonist Kosei. He is distraught, unable to play the piano, unable to live without Kaori there to guide him. It's through his clear emotional distress that we as an audience have a vessel to experience the grief of Kaori's death. He can't lose anyone else, not after losing his mother. He can't lose Kaori, and by extension, neither can we. We pray she will get better. We hope that the surgery is successful. We need to see Kosei and her play together one last time. But sadly, that isn't what happens, and that's okay. Kosei plays his heart out one last time, as he finally accepts losing the person who means the most to him. He is able to say goodbye, and so do we. The moment of a death is important for so many reasons. The last moment we see of them has to be one that we remember for years to come. But what comes after? Sometimes a character's death can be done perfectly. It can tick all the metaphorical boxes that mortality should tick. But what follows after can ruin the impactful moment. The worst offender by far, in my opinion, is Clannad Afterstory. I want to get this out there first. I love Clannad Afterstory. I love the characters, the story, the harsh reality of adulthood it depicts. I don't love Nagisa's death. More specifically, what follows after. The death itself is handled amazingly. Tomoya's raw emotion can be felt so strongly, so vividly, it's hard to not tear up. Everything works together to make one of the most emotional deaths I've ever witnessed in any show. And what follows after is also just amazing. Tomio reconnecting with Ushio, his child, which reminds him so much of his dead wife, is beautiful to say the least. If the show ended here, then it would probably be my favourite show of all time. But there just had to be a little more. A little more which undoes everything I detailed before. While the ending is somewhat ambiguous, in simple terms, everything is erased and Nagisa doesn't even die during childbirth, and they all live happily ever after. What? After all that emotional growth and fantastic storytelling, it all gets swept under the rug in what is equivalent to "it's just a dream." When I think back on Nagisa's death, I don't remember how emotional or how impactful it was anymore. That effect is lost. Instead, what stays with me is how none of it even matters. And that hurts a lot more. Okay, but what about what I think is the best death in anime? The most emotional, the most lasting, the most painful to rewatch. Well, for me, there's only one anime which is able to so clearly stick out in my head, with the mere thought of its ending being enough to make my heart ache. That anime is I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. Much like Your Lie in April, I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, one of the most lovable females in the entire medium. Sakura is warm, lovable, strong, and sadly, once again, dying. This time of a pancreatic disease, the film wastes no time telling the audience of her impending death. Only 6 minutes in, and we know we're going to be in for an emotional ride. Only this time, there's nothing to be done. No surgeries, no final performance, only death. The protagonist, Haruki, knows this as well. Yet she is still able to become such a huge part of his life, practically forcing herself in. And we want her to. We want them to spend as much time together before it's too late. They make plans, they go on trips, they grow closer and closer, cherishing each and every moment together, as do we and the movie itself. Each second that passes when we watch the film feels as if she's getting closer and closer to death, and yet there is nothing we can do to stop it. This is also how Haruki feels, so perfectly mimicked in the audience. That's why we can so intently empathize with him. When Sakura is forcibly taken from us months too early, she gets murdered on her way to meet Haruki. It isn't even the pancreatic disease that kills her. And that's what hurts the most. We still had time, Haruki still had time, but it was taken from us. We weren't given any warning, any time to say goodbye. She's just gone. Life is so fragile. One moment it's there, the next, it's gone. That's why we ought to spend every single moment living it to its fullest, as Sakura or Kaori would. Anime can be a medium to tell such amazing, great stories, and this is exemplified through its ability to tell such gripping and emotional stories about death, and its effect on people around them. Thanks for watching.